She never got involved in scandals, never disrespected anyone. And yet, she's one of the most hated celebrities in Korea. Since her debut, Jisoo has been the target of cruel criticism, malicious comments, and unfair comparisons, even though she's talented, kind, and basically flawless. Today, you'll understand why this woman never had peace, and what's really behind this absurd hatred. Before becoming the famous face featured in magazines, luxury campaigns, and major Korean productions, Kim Jisoo was just an ordinary girl born in Gunpo, South Korea, on January 3, 1995. The youngest of 3 siblings, she grew up in a loving family, away from the spotlight, studying art, and dreaming of pursuing something that involved creativity. Those who knew her in childhood say that Jisoo always had a light, gentle aura, a type of silent charisma that didn't need effort to be noticed. In 2011, at 16 years old, she entered as a trainee at YG Entertainment, one of Korea's biggest agencies. It was almost 5 years of intense training before finally debuting in 2016 as one of Blackpink's members. Even in a group with names as striking as Jennie, Lisa, and Rose, Jisoo immediately stood out for her classic Korean beauty, serene presence, and impeccable image. It didn't take long for her to be nicknamed YG's princess, not only for her looks, but also for how she represented the company with elegance, without scandals, without excesses. But Jisoo never wanted to be just a pretty face. Passionate about acting, she began taking her first steps as an actress in small roles back in 2015, but it was only in 2021 in the drama Snowdrop that she finally got a leading role. The production was controversial from the beginning for dealing with delicate historical themes, but Jisoo dove into the challenge with courage. The result was a performance that divided opinions. The most shocking thing about Jisoo's trajectory might not be her meteoric rise to stardom, but rather the fact that, from the beginning, she was the target of silent and unjustifiable hatred. Before even opening her mouth, before showing who she really was, there were already people ready to hate her. And this didn't happen because of scandals. It didn't happen because of mistakes. It happened simply because she was there, too beautiful, too modest, and, for many, too boring. As if existing with discretion were an offense in a world that demands performance all the time. When Blackpink debuted in 2016, attention turned to Jennie and Lisa, each with obvious talent. Powerful rap, mesmerizing dance, striking voice. Jisoo, on the other hand, was always the most serene, the calmest, the one who transmitted presence without effort. But it was exactly this that became ammunition for haters. She doesn't sing well, she's the weakest in the group. She's only in Blackpink because of her beauty. Comments like these began to multiply in Korean forums, social media, and comment sections that seemed made just to distill poison. But was she really weak? Or were they expecting something more explosive from her, more flashy, easier to label? The truth is that Jisoo always had a sweet timbre, with stability in live performances, plus a subtle charisma that connected deeply with the audience. It's just that in a group where each member has such a distinctive personality, she ended up being read as invisible, and the public that doesn't understand the value of silence began to treat her as a mistake. Another factor that increased the hate was the culture of comparison, and no one suffers more from this than women in K-pop. With each comeback, each interview, each public appearance, lists and more lists emerged ranking who was the best in the group. Jisoo was almost never placed at the top, and as if that weren't enough, forced internal rivalries began to emerge among fans. Lisa carries the group, Rose is the only one who sings, Jennie is the most talented, and Jisoo? She's only there for appearance? This, repeated for years, undermines even the strongest artist. To make matters worse, YG itself always did very little to protect her. While other members got individual projects, major partnerships, and media space, Jisoo always seemed to be last in line. No official statement was released in her defense when the attacks intensified, and this only fed the idea that she was disposable. And if anyone thought the hate against Jisoo would diminish over time, they were wrong. Actually, it transformed. It gained a new form, more cruel, more demanding, more disguised as technical criticism. Because when she starred as the protagonist of the drama Snowdrop in 2021, what should have been a consecration became another battlefield. Before they said she was weak as a singer, now they said she was terrible as an actress. From the first teasers, the expectations were absurd. It wasn't enough to act well. She had to prove she deserved to be there. She had to compensate for years of judgment in K-pop. She had to silence critics with flawless acting from the first episode. As if one mistake, one less intense look, or one line with different intonation would be enough to delegitimize all her effort. And when the first scenes of Snowdrop Snowdrop aired, the attacks came like an avalanche. She has no expression. She only knows how to look pretty. She looks like a forced idol trying to be an actress. These phrases were repeated in forums like Pan and The Coup, creating an environment where praising Jisoo was almost an act of resistance. But what many people didn't know, or chose to ignore, is that Snowdrop was already an extremely sensitive project. The drama addressed a dark period in Korea's history, touching on national wounds that were still open. The pressure was immense even for an experienced actor, and Jisoo, in her debut as a protagonist, had to deal not only with the weight of the character, but also with the responsibility of not making any mistakes, because a slip would be used against her, as it indeed was. Jisoo's acting, although it received praise from industry professionals, was treated as insufficient by part of the public, not for being bad, but because she wasn't allowed to make mistakes. While other idol actresses received support and time to mature on screen, mainly because they started from the bottom, with less prominent roles and in smaller dramas, with Jisoo, everything was more severe, more demanding, more merciless. For being so famous, she was already elevated to lead in a high-impact drama, and this is no coincidence. There's a cruel tendency within the Korean industry, and within many fandoms, to punish women who don't perform pain or scandal. Since Jisoo was always discreet, ethical, and serene, the public wanted something to hold on to. Since they couldn't find dirt in her personal life, they created impossible demands in her professional life. The lack of controversy became a reason to demand perfection. And still, she continued, without fighting back, without creating controversy, without lowering her head. Snowdrop not only marked her debut, it was also the moment when Jisoo proved herself as an artist, even though many refused to admit it. But no matter how much she demonstrated talent, focus, and posture, it seemed like the public always found a new reason to criticize her. And when personal life entered the scene, the situation reached a new level of cruelty. In August 2023, Dispatch, a site famous for revealing celebrity relationships, published photos of Jisoo and actor An Bo-hyun entering and leaving the same building, fueling rumors that were soon confirmed by their respective agencies. And that's when chaos began. Instead of applause or supportive messages, the internet exploded in judgments, demands, and toxic comments. The relationship, which could have been just another chapter in the personal lives of two public figures, became a spectacle of hostility. More possessive fans reacted as if they had been betrayed. Comments like, "She ruined the group," "Jisoo disappointed the Blinks," or "She was never serious about her career," took over social media. Many forgot that Jisoo is an adult woman with the right to her own emotional life and treated her like public property, as if she needed permission to love. At the same time came machista attacks disguised as concern. Some said that An Bo-hyun was not enough for her, that she deserved someone better, more famous, more handsome, as if the value of a relationship depended on status. Others accused Jisoo of taking advantage of the actor's fame, or the opposite, that he was promoting himself at her expense. Neither could simply love without being dissected in public square. The relationship, which began discreetly, lasted only 2 months before the official announcement of the breakup. The agencies stated that the end was motivated by busy schedules, but no one is naive enough to believe that the absurd pressure from public opinion didn't weigh in. Jisoo, as always, maintained silence. There was no outburst, no indirect messages. She just moved forward, as she always did. But what remained in the air, for those who paid attention, was the tiredness in her look. After the breakup, fans noticed that Jisoo seemed more withdrawn at events, more careful in interviews. The exposure of that lightning relationship left marks, not just from the pain of a separation, but from yet another confirmation that, in her case, even love is a reason for hatred. And perhaps the cruelest thing about all this is the irony. Jisoo spent her life being accused of not delivering anything. When she finally showed her vulnerability by assuming a relationship, she was punished for it. Once again, she couldn't make mistakes. She couldn't fall in love. She couldn't live without receiving stones. Even with all this history of attacks, Jisoo was never seen as a victim. She was never treated with the same empathy that so many other celebrities receive when facing waves of hate. Why? Because she didn't cry in public? Because she didn't make emotional posts? Because she didn't beg for understanding? There's an unfair weight placed on artists like her to endure everything silently, with a smile on her face, as if she felt nothing. And this silence, which many interpret as coldness, is actually strength. The way Jisoo found to continue being who she is, without bowing to the pressure of pleasing everyone. While other public figures get involved in controversies, apologies, rebuttals, and virtual fights, she remains faithful to her essence, the same sweet and dedicated girl who entered YG at 16, full of dreams. It's important to remember that Jisoo never needed to reinvent herself to remain relevant. She didn't change her personality, didn't force maturity, didn't cling to trends or scandals. She grew organically, matured in the public eye without losing her essence. Her image continues to be associated with elegance, respect, calm, and this by itself is already revolutionary in an industry where everything needs to be intense and instantaneous all the time. That's why it's time to make a movement contrary to what so many have done in recent years, to stop repeating malicious comments as if they were absolute truths, to look at Jisoo with clean eyes, without the distorted filter of comparison, envy, or unrealistic expectation. Because deep down, what she always did was give everything of herself, without fanfare, without drama, without seeking approval. And if you've made it this far, maybe you've already realized that this story was never just about Jisoo. It's about how we treat people who don't perform suffering, about how we demand justifications from those who just want to exist in peace, about how it's easier to attack those who don't fight back, who don't respond, who simply continue in silence. Jisoo deserves more, and the least we can do is recognize this. Recognize the artist, the woman, the human being who survived all this without ceasing to be who she is. Like, comment, and say in the comments, which moment of Jisoo marked you the most? Let's transform this space into a place of respect, because the world already has too much hate, and Jisoo deserves love.